Welcome to the debate. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the analysis of one of Formula One's really heavily scrutinized title contenders, Lando Norris. The source material detailing his racecraft, his career trajectory, well, it forces us to ask a pretty crucial question. Does the evidence really confirm Norris as an absolute top-tier elite driver, capable of consistently challenging for world championships alongside peers like Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc? Or do his identifiable weaknesses, both the statistical ones and maybe psychological, prevent him from reaching that truly rarefied air? I'll be arguing that Norris's occasional challenges are frankly overwhelmingly circumstantial and often engineering limited, and that his fundamental pace and his adaptability absolutely confirm his status among the grid's elite.
And, well, I come at it from a slightly different angle. While his raw talent it's undeniable, right? And it certainly places him in the top echelon of current drivers, sure. But I'm going to argue that critical, persistent, statistical, and tactical weaknesses prevent him from being classified in that absolute peak tier, the one really reserved for those who become serial world champions. He's missing that final layer of refinement, I think.
Okay, so to establish Norris's elite status, we really have to focus first on the foundation, his pedigree. It's utterly world-class. I mean, he didn't just participate in junior formula, he absolutely dominated them. He achieved feats that kind of echo the careers of the true legends. He became the youngest ever CIK FIA KF world champion, following in some very big footsteps there. And crucially, he won 5 major single-seater championships in just 3 years, across all sorts of different machinery. Now, this isn't just talent, it's innate, raw, world-class pace combined with just immediate adaptability. This adaptability, for me, is the definitive proof of his elite status in Formula One. Just consider his time with McLaren. He has consistently extracted maximum performance from cars that, particularly early on, let's be honest, often had deeply peculiar handling characteristics. Specifically, that persistent weakness at the front end, making them inherently difficult to drive.
Difficult, yes.
Right? And the most concrete evidence of his quality here is his comprehensive outperformance of a proven Grand Prix winner, Daniel Ricciardo. In 2022, Norris held a frankly staggering 14-1 qualifying head-to-head advantage. Now, to comprehensively dispatch a driver of Ricciardo's proven caliber like that, it demonstrates a world-class ability to compensate and drive around the car's fundamental limitations. That right there is the hallmark of an elite F1 talent.
Okay, I see why you think that, and I absolutely agree his junior pedigree and, his pace over Ricciardo are superb markers of talent, no argument there. However, the definition of an absolute elite driver, your Verstappen or a peak Hamilton, is someone who not only has talent, but who also overcomes or ideally eliminates recurring weaknesses, succeeding in all phases of the race. And that is where the data, for me, reveals a persistent shortfall for Norris. The most statistically jarring flaw, really, is his performance on the opening lap, particularly when he starts right from the front. The analysis points to a well-documented pattern of failing to convert pole position into the lead at the end of lap 1. He failed to do so in 8 of 9 attempts before his more recent victories. Now, this isn't just bad luck. This feels like a systemic operational vulnerability.
He has repeatedly given up track position to rivals like George Russell, Charles Leclerc, even his own teammate, Oscar Piastri, in these really high-stakes moments. This points to a recurring issue. Maybe reaction time, maybe tactical positioning, or perhaps some risk aversion in the tight confines of that initial burst. A vulnerability that, frankly, a true peak-level performer simply doesn't carry consistently. Furthermore, we do have to address the tactical dimension. He often seems to lack that necessary tactical ruthlessness or killer instinct that really defines champions. His calculated approach, while intelligent over a race distance, frequently leaves him vulnerable or maybe hesitant in critical high-aggression wheel-to-wheel scenarios, especially against those uncompromising rivals who operate right on the edge.
Okay, I accept that the statistical anomaly concerning his starts
It does require attention. I won't deny that. But I think that's kind of missing the bigger picture regarding his overall racecraft and, importantly, the specific machinery he's operating. Let's look at the critique that Norris gets stuck in traffic after those starts. I contend this is an oversimplification that completely ignores the engineering reality. The problem is technical. It's rooted directly in the historical design philosophy of the McLaren cars he drove for much of that time. The car's persistent, weak front end means it is disproportionately affected by turbulent, dirty air. Simple physics. When following another car closely, the front wings lose a massive amount of downforce, making the car physically understeer quite aggressively. That loss of lateral grip in the crucial front end makes it virtually impossible for the driver to rotate the car into a slow-speed corner or sustain the high-speed cornering stability needed to actually mount an attack. It becomes an engineering-limited problem, really, where no amount of driver skill can consistently overcome the aerodynamic ceiling imposed by that turbulence.
That's a compelling point. And certainly, the dirty air issue is magnified for a car that already lacks front-end confidence. No one denies the technical constraints were difficult. However, the true apex predators of the sport, they require the skill to minimize the impact of those constraints. If it were purely an engineering limitation, then why did the analysis of the 2020 season reveal such a stark statistical disparity between Norris and his then teammate Carlos Sainz? The data shows that Sainz gained an average of 1.1 positions on the opening lap, while Norris gained net zero. Now, if the machinery was the sole bottleneck, you'd expect those figures to be pretty closely aligned.
Maybe.
But they aren't. Sainz, perhaps through greater confidence on cold tires, maybe slightly later braking points, or just superior tactical positioning into turn one. Finding those small gaps, he was able to consistently exploit opportunities that Norris seemed to miss. This statistical gap, for me, points directly toward a recurring deficiency in tactical execution and, let's say, high-risk maneuvering during that absolutely critical first-lap scramble. And that transcends the equipment's inherent difficulties. It suggests a limitation in maximizing opportunity under duress.
I'm just not convinced that a statistic from 2020 in a different car defines a talent who is known for his evolution, his constant improvement. I would frame the core of his racecraft as strategic brilliance over the full distance. His tire management is exceptional. He demonstrates the patience and intelligence of like a chess master rather than the impulsive nature of a tactician who just relies solely on raw aggression. This measured approach, it earns him immense success over a Grand Prix distance.
But this measured, calculated philosophy, doesn't it often translate directly into indecisiveness in the moments that matter most? Those sudden high-aggression opportunities where a pass must be secured immediately? We're not just talking about the 2021 Russian Grand Prix incident, although that certainly serves as a powerful illustration of, well, failure under high pressure. When he finds himself unable to secure a quick pass, critics have noted instances where his subsequent attempts to look a bit clumsy or involve stupid lunges that just don't stick. It suggests he's uncomfortable with the close, high-contact combat sometimes required to force the issue. He is fundamentally a clean driver, which is laudable, yes, but that cleanliness seems rooted in a discomfort with high-aggression, improvised combat scenarios. And we really must revisit that Russian GP loss. Yes, okay, he drove flawlessly up to that point, managing the gap, the tires perfectly. But when the rain came, and the pressure absolutely mounted for the decisive call, he made a catastrophic failure of high-pressure strategic command, telling the team to shut up right before sliding off track and losing a guaranteed win. That wasn't a tactical gamble. That was a failure to receive and process critical, evolving information under extreme duress. Champions, those in the absolute elite tier, they demonstrate command and clarity in those closing stages.
Look, that Russian Grand Prix was a vital, painful lesson for a young driver chasing his first victory. And to hold one strategic error against years of genuinely exceptional race management seems, unduly punitive to me. His precision is a virtue because it minimizes risk over the long haul of a season. Furthermore, his measured approach earns him immense respect across the paddock, which is invaluable. You have high-profile contemporaries, multiple world champions like Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. They have praised Norris as a hard but crucially fair racer they can trust wheel to wheel. Now, that is a significant endorsement of his skill and his judgment. It directly refutes the subjective assessment of some missing killer instinct. It suggests he simply exercises superior judgment, choosing battles where the risk-to-reward ratio makes sense, conserving his machinery, and importantly, his points tally.
But in that absolute elite tier, can you really afford to have trust be the deciding factor? Sometimes you must force the issue. And this leads us directly into the context of his rivalry with the benchmark of the current generation, Max Verstappen.
Exactly. The struggles against Verstappen have to be understood as asymmetrical warfare, not just a simple measure of overtaking ability. Verstappen is notorious for operating constantly in the gray areas of the regulations, strategically positioning his car to force rivals into what we essentially call the crash or back-off dynamic. We saw this clearly, for example, in the 2024 Austrian GP collision, where Verstappen was deemed predominantly at fault. Norris, as the challenger, often holding a points deficit and, importantly, not having the decades of champion status or, frankly, the team dominance that Verstappen enjoys, he is making a rational calculation that he simply cannot afford a non-finish. Verstappen can arguably afford a double DNF and still be right there. Norris, trying to establish himself and win his first title, cannot absorb those kinds of losses. This psychological and tactical pressure fundamentally alters the dynamic. So when Norris maybe hesitates, it's not necessarily a lack of skill. It could be intelligence responding to an unfair, asymmetrical dynamic where one driver operates with a degree of impunity and the other must be almost flawless.
That's a compelling way to frame it, I grant you that. But if Norris's defining characteristic in this key rivalry becomes his necessary hesitation due to risk calculation, then isn't he conceding the psychological initiative required to be a champion? The absolute elite drivers, the ones who become serial title winners, they have to be the ones who define the terms of engagement, regardless of the points gap. They dictate the pace and the aggression level. Look closely at that dynamic. While Verstappen often operates in the gray areas, sure, the true measure of an elite challenger is the ability to stand firm, to sometimes force the defending champion to reconsider their lines or their aggression level. If Norris consistently backs out because the cost of a DNF is perceived as too high, he is in effect confirming that he hasn't yet acquired the psychological weight, that presence required to consistently prevail against the grid's most aggressive defenders. He absolutely has the speed, no doubt, but until he masters that psychological warfare and eliminates those persistent statistical vulnerabilities on the first lap, he remains exceptionally talented, yes, but perhaps a tier below the absolute peak.
So, to summarize my position, Lando Norris is unquestionably an elite Formula One talent. His racecraft is defined by intelligence, exceptional adaptability, and immense speed over a race distance. The critique that he gets stuck or is sometimes indecisive is, I believe, overwhelmingly explained by technical limitations, that sensitive front end making following physically debilitating, and the high-pressure, asymmetrical nature of battling an uncompromising rival like Verstappen. His fundamental speed and his proven ability to comprehensively outclass a known talent like Ricciardo in difficult machinery, that confirms his place among the sport's very best drivers, ready to convert potential into championships once the car fully allows it.
And I conclude that while Norris possesses all the foundational components of an elite driver, the evidence points to specific, persistent deficiencies that currently separate him from that rarefied air of a Verstappen or a Hamilton at their operational peak. The recurring statistical weakness in race starts, highlighted by that historical gap to Sainz, and perhaps a deficiency in tactical ruthlessness in the closest combat, these remain, I think, fundamental barriers. These are complex areas he must refine under intense pressure. He is tremendously fast, highly adaptive, absolutely, but that final step to consistent, serial championship contention requires mastering these intricate, pressure-filled moments that ultimately determine title fate.
Yeah, I think we can agree there's no doubt that Lando Norris is a sophisticated and highly adaptable talent. his journey continues to offer really profound lessons on the complexity of racecraft right at the pinnacle of motorsport.
Absolutely. And watching that final evolution, the potential move from exceptional talent to true, undeniable champion is what continues to make his career trajectory so utterly compelling to follow.